One of the most popular embellishments in scrapbooking and card making is the flower. From a simple pre-made flower with a brad in the center to a large flower purchased in the floral department, flowers add a touch of beauty to many of our creative projects.
Today, Betty and I are going to show you how to create several of our favorite flower embellishments using various paper crafting techniques.
One of the easiest ways to add variety to a pre-made flower is to create an interesting flower center. Besides brads, 3 commonly used embellishments are buttons, ribbons, and chipboard. You can also purchase pre-made embellishments that will look great in the center of your card. In this card, I added twine in the center of buttons and added that to the center of a pre-made flower, just to give it a little bit more dimension. In this next example, I've made a before and after card to show you how an elaborate card center can change a pretty card into a fabulous card. Another way of enhancing a beautiful card is to add a ribbon in the center of the flower. We're going to make this card today. First, you take your brown cardstock and cut it into a card base. Then we add a pink piece to the front that's cut 4 by 5 1/4 inches. We'll add the 2 complementary papers to them, and before we put those on the card, we want to add just a little bit of ink around them. And we're going to show you one way to ink, and then in other shows we'll give you more examples of this, but you just go right around the edge so it makes that paper pop just a little bit. Then we will do the corner rounder and take it around to clip off those corners. And I'm not going to finish this, but show you the one that we've already completed, corners rounded, bling across the bottom. And we'll just substitute that flower. And then to make the ribbon, we're going to tie it and add it to the center of our card. We take the pink ribbon, bring it around, clip off the edges, and then we'll adhere that with our glue dots, and you have a striking card that the eye comes straight to that beautiful wide ribbon.
So for an inexpensive flower that adds a ton of extra pizzazz, simply tear 3 circles from red cardstock. Next, you want to use your thumb and forefinger to curl the edges and add just a little bit more dimension. We're going to take some brown ink, and I'm using Brilliance Pearlescent Chocolate on a sponge, and rub it around the edges of all 3 of your circles. And next, we want to create some leaves for this flower. So I tore 3 leaves from green cardstock, and to add the veins and make it look a little bit more realistic, simply fold one of the leaves in half and then make a few additional folds in that green cardstock leaf, and then rub it on top of your brown ink pad. You don't want to do too much, but when it's done, you have a really cool looking leaf. You can assemble this flower by just placing adhesive between the layers, adding your leaves, and topping it off with a chipboard accent. And then when you're done, you can add some photos and you have a layout with a really fantastic bloom.
In card making and scrapbooking, flowers don't always need to be round. In the next example that I show you, we're going to make a card that has a flower folded in half and placed on the side of the card. When I originally designed this card, I had intended to place a flower in the center, but somehow I managed to get home with all of my materials and paper, but I only had 1 flower. When I added it to the top, it looked a little bit flimsy. It wasn't the right proportion. So then I began to start playing with ideas. How can I cover my mistake? So finally I decided if I would fold the card in 2 and then take the center that I'd already selected and put it on top of the card, then I could just trim off the excess on that flower, and I would have a card that was a little bit different, but certainly was pleasing. So even though this flower started out with a rocky start, it ended with a great result.
That's a clever idea. So to create the next flower, we can use the same technique that I demonstrated previously for the center of the other stunning flower. Let's just begin by inking this grunge board flower with a red dye-based ink pad. And you kind of have to rub it on there so that the ink gets into some of the crevices, but you don't want to cover it completely. Next, we have torn our center of our flower out of some patterned floral paper, and when the ink dries, we can adhere it in the center. But first I want to spritz it with a little bit of this Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist. This will kind of tone down the red, but also add a bit of metallic. You can move it out of that mist, and once it's dry, add your center. Finally, we're going to take a piece of gold paper that has a really pretty flourish already printed on it, and I'm going to use that flourish as the stem for my flower. So I'm going to take a brown fine point on my Zig Writer and trace the outside of that stem, and then I'm going to come back in with a platinum Zig Writer using the bold point to add some shadow to the right side of each of these stems. And when it's completed, you have a customized background that really makes those flowers pop off the page.
If you've looked carefully at the cards that I've shown so far today, you have probably already figured out that I love the technique of layering. In the last card in this segment, I want to show you how to mix and match different brands, different sizes, and contrasting colors of flowers to make an elegant card. To make this card, I've taken pink cardstock and covered it with basic gray paper. Then we will begin to layer. First, I selected a very large brown card, and each of these flowers was just a leftover from another project. We've added to that a pink flower to go in the center. We'll top it off with a green flower from Basil, and then add to that a pre-made embellishment from American Crafts. But as you look at this card, you can see that it is a card that anyone would want to receive, even though you've just taken those pieces that you have from other projects and put them together.
Those layers are just gorgeous. So the next flower is a bit more involved, but definitely worth the effort. Let's begin by cutting pink paper into 3 1-inch scallop strips. Next, we're going to pleat them. So to do that, you start with a scallop at the top, and then fold the next 2 scallops in half so they meet like a closed door. Then you have another complete scallop, so we're going to fold 2 more scallops in half so they meet again like a closed door, and so on until you have all of your pleats finished. Your strips will look like this. And then we are going to punch a circle out of patterned paper using this 2.5-inch circle punch. I've already applied glue dots along the back of the circle to save a little bit of time. And so you can take your pleated strips and adhere them to the back of your circle. And it doesn't really matter where they start and stop, because this is a little bit sloppy anyway. It looks more handcrafted. When you have that completed, we're going to top it off with a few gems, and I'm using these Mark Richards red crystals, and so I've already cut them apart, and using your tweezer bees, just apply a few of them to the details in that circle. And then finally, we're going to adhere it to the page. So we're using just a turquoise polka dotted paper, and I want to create the stem, so I'm using a 3/8 inch piece of grosgrain ribbon. It's about 14 inches long, and we'll just run our adhesive along the back side of that ribbon, and starting from the bottom, I'm going to tuck it under the bottom of the page and sloppily pleat it. And once I get that done, I want to create a leaf using a 5-inch strip of the green ribbon, and I just need a little bit of adhesive on it to fold it over in a loop and adhere it like so. Finally, you can adhere your flower to the top of that, and when it's done, this is what it looks like.